Have you made a will?
Well, I did when I got divorced.
Yeah.
But up until that point, no, not at all. And also when Liam was 31, you don't think about dying. And I know you didn't either. Well, you still haven't.
My dad, on the day that my husband left, so my husband left, this is 26 years ago, about 3 o'clock in the morning. And in the morning, I couldn't sleep, of course, you can imagine. And I rang my dad. It was about 6 a.m. I woke him up. I said to him, my husband's just left me. And guess what he said?
My God.
Go and change your will. The first thing he said, you've got to change your will, because if you get run over today, he'll get all the money. Not that there was very much money, actually. And after the divorce, there was even less. But anyway, he said, you've got to... And I did. I went that day, the actual day, and changed the will in favour of the children.
See,
so
I
that
love
if
your
anything
dad.
happened to me, you know, it would be taken care of. Because of course, if he'd left me, I didn't want him to have whatever money there was. So that's how seriously that was taken in my family.
Yeah.
What about you, Nicola?
No, I mean, I'm a fly by the seat of the pants kind of girl. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't think about dying.
I've seen your pants. They're little.
Lots of people...
They were even littler when I was yeah, no, I just don't think of these things. I'm not a very responsible person. Like, I'm fun to be around. I'm a great mum. Like, I love the fun stuff. I don't want to deal with any boring stuff. I still live like quite childish.
Like, you're thinking of it now because you have to. For these few minutes, we're thinking about it now. Chris, have you made a will?
I tried to make one. I went to a solicitor, and because I've got the house I live in, but I've got buy-to-let property, I've got companies that I own as well. When I really wanted it to be like, you know, like Dallas, where they open the will and they say, I'm leaving controlling interest of Cristo Industries too, with close-up. But they made it really complicated. They said, oh, no, you've got to break it down into the percentages of your estate and work out what percentage you want to give to each person and make your husband the main beneficiary. And it got so complicated, I thought it's not, I wanted to divide up each thing.
In just a second by the expert it shouldn't be complicated at all, and also how important it is for everyone, even if you haven't got any actual money, even if you don't own your property, even if you've just got a couple of things like a pretty old car and not much else, to make a will. So let's find out about this. Joining us now, Trushaveji Hirani, who's a lawyer and works with Will Aid. Hi, so nice to see you. Thank you for joining us. Explain to my unruly panel here, please, why it's very important, whether you've got lots of money or none at all, to make a will.
Absolutely. Thank you, Vanessa, for having me. Making a will is so easy to do, and I don't know why so many people don't actually put a will in place. I think the key thing to think about is just because you're going to make a will, it doesn't mean that you're going to die. Going to speaking to an expert and making sure that your wishes are actually reflected are incredibly important things to do. So the panel members, I'd probably say, if you get divorced, make sure you get a will, you know, and update it. If you've got children, things to think about there as well.
What happens if you don't have a will, which is the question I asked you? If you don't make a will because you're irresponsible, you're young, you don't want to think about death, you can't be bothered, you think it's boring, you don't think you've got any money, you don't think you've got anything to leave anyway, all the reasons that people don't make a will, very often superstition primarily, and also a kind of laziness, which is all linked up to the superstition. You just don't fancy thinking about your death. If you don't have one, what happens?
So the rules of intestacy happen. I think we're looking at it with Liam Payne at the moment, aren't we? So, you know, if you're leaving a spouse behind, it's going to go to your spouse, but not everything passes to your spouse automatically. So you've got 322,000 that would pass to your spouse, and then the rest would pass to your children. If you haven't got children, you're looking at your parents and then your brothers and sisters. Perhaps, you know, we had a conversation earlier, you might not get on with all your family members. You might not want them to inherit.
Yes, and hang on, and if I mean, that's all very nice if you're all tucked up, married with children, but what if you're not married? What if you don't have any children? What if you're single, and what are you meant to do then?
So if you're single, even more reason to want to make a will, because you want to make sure that whatever you're earning, whatever you're building up is going to pass to the people that you want to pass it to. A lot of people feel that if they're in a relationship, it's automatically going to go to your partner just because perhaps during your lifetime you've said, right, you're going to get my money. But unless you make a will, that's not going to happen. Yes. So it is so important to make sure that your will, which is a reflection of your wishes, is actually noted down and the people that you want to benefit are actually going to benefit.
All right. Is it possible to just write down on a tablecloth, a napkin, the back of a bus ticket, you know, I would like to leave everything to my partner, put the partner's name and ask the waiter, sorry, can you just come over here and witness this and sign it and make sure it's in a safe place? Does that count, or does it have to be a bit more official and kosher than that?
Yeah, as long as there were two waiters to witness the will, absolutely. So you can write it on a napkin. As long as that will is signed, witnessed by two people, it potentially can make a valid will. However, let's say it wasn't in a restaurant setting and it was done in perhaps hospital, you're then looking at whether or not the person actually understood that they're making a will, whether or not they understood the contents of the will, whether they were pressurized into making that will. So the chances of it potentially being contested or challenged stays there. So is it a good idea to write it on a napkin? Perhaps not a biodegradable one.
Good answer. Excellent. You stay with us because we're going on to callers. Helen's on the line in Warwickshire. Helen, you think it's very important to make a will?
Extremely important, particularly if you've got children.
Yes.
As soon as my first child was born, I was only 20. Mm-hmm. My husband was 24. He was in the Navy. And we found it absolutely imperative that we secured the safety of our child.
Yes.
So we made a will asking my sister and my brother-in-law, would they be willing to care for that child and any subsequent children should anything happen to us. We'd got nothing, Vanessa, in the way of material things, but we needed to make sure the children would be cared for.
Absolutely. I had to do the same thing to appoint somebody, the guardian of your children. You have to ask their permission, and if they say yes. And it's quite hard to think of somebody that you love and trust enough, actually, to put your children in their care. You're absolutely right, Helen, and thank you so much for ringing. Let's go to Elaine in Manchester. Elaine, you have written a will, I believe.
I have. The thing is, when I was 60, my two daughters and I went to New York to celebrate my birthday. Now, my will at that time was that my daughters would inherit my wealth. But subsequently, if we all died, and I know it's gruesome, but if we all died in that plane, then my youngest daughter would have been deemed to have inherited my wealth, and her next of kin would have got it, and my next of kin was my ex-husband.
Oh, boo.
So, no
Didn't want him to get it. So what did you do? Who did you put in the will would get it if you all had perished on that trip to New York? And thank God you didn't. But who did you put should get it then?
My nephew.
Oh, your nephew. Yeah, because you wanted to go to the nephew you like, not the ex-husband you can't stand. That's why it's so important. Elaine, lovely to hear from you. So glad you survived the trip and you're intact. That's good to hear. It is really important to make a will, even if you don't have any money. It really is, because that way it's what you want. If you don't, it can be any old thing. Which
Even
you don't.
if it's
and
a
also,
dog.
And also, you don't
have
want the
the dog.
Chancellor to get his mitts on it either, do you?
No,
You don't want the
absolutely
Chancellor to
not.
get his mitts
You're
on,
going to go make
you
a
know,
will,
that
yeah.
one vase and that broken down old jalopy that you drive. It's up to you to say who gets them. That's the whole point. And it doesn't have to be expensive to do. And in fact, there are lots of charities that will help you do it for nothing. There's just a form that you can fill out. Thanks so much to Elaine and to Trusha. Don't